Our Love, Diary of a Prince, written by Cameron Holder. Chapter 3, June 16th, 1750. Dearest Diary, I come to you humbly to inform you that I am 100% sure Augustus has a sort of pursuit for my affection. Since my last entry, I visited him and Priscilla yesterday at their estate, and I went on a tiny getaway with their family. For the entire day we ventured around their beach estate in Lido de Venecia, where only the rich of the rich had access to this luxury island. Priscilla had more maids in this home, and had a beautiful view of the Adriatic Sea, with a private garden filled with crocus, columbine, and cornflower plots, with a little attractive fountain. I walked around the garden, intentionally wanting myself to become lost when I heard someone walking through the garden also. Augustus popped out and frightened me, but I quickly laughed, and unexpectedly he kissed me. The love of my life kissed me. His lips were perched and soft, the taste of sweet cherries in the springtime. My heart thumped and flew around my body like a firework. I quickly pulled away from him, hoping no one saw the sinful action. He did not understand why I pulled back, but then I pointed out the faded images of Priscilla and his parents through the bushes, and he finally understood. I like the feeling of young, fresh love. However, I do not want to get him in trouble with the higher government and bring shame to his family. So I told him that we had to pretend our love is not real, so others won't suspect anything of it. Of course, I wanted to go insane with affection and explore the endless possibilities that our love can travel, but I had to stay poised. He agreed and apologized. Before Priscilla walked in on us, he kissed me one more time, and I wanted to hold on to dear love, feel the passion and romance of his body pushing up against mine. I wanted him to lift me up off my feet and carry me to the sea, where we could swim in our delicious sin and carefully unclothe each other, revealing our precious pearls. I am saying too much to get myself filled with desire and lust, but that is how I feel about him all the time. However, when Priscilla finally found us through the maze, she asked us what we were doing, and I quickly responded with the simplest answer that made sense in my head at the time, but now I fear that it was a fool's answer. Augustus was showing me the different flowers and how they came about to be a part of Italian history. She looked confused, but did not question us any further. She told us to stop playing fairy games and hurry to the seashore because her parents were planning to voyage out to sea. She left, and we kissed for a few more seconds. It felt so nice to have another man who was falling deeply in love with me. I wish that these moments never end. We walked to the seashore dock and boarded their parents' boat, which was cleverly named La Liberta. The sun was beaming down on us while we sailed through the clear watered sea, and I could smell the salty air blowing in my face. It was a magical experience. I just wish I could live my life in La Liberta with Augustus. But I know in my heart that these ignorant swines have no sort of open-mindedness, so I probably will never be accepted of my sin. Off about 10 miles from the land we anchored, and the maids cooked up supper for the evening, including hors d'oeuvre, crab, squid, and lobster. I am so glad I have a rich friend like Priscilla, so I have free entry to the life of a wealthy child, and thank goodness her parents love me enough to feed me such expensive foods. I have a feeling you predicted our conversations that wealthy people have, so I won't bore you with their unimportant speeches about politics and money, trades, or religion. I don't even think I was too focused on the conversation, but the enchanting smile of my lovely. The way he smiles makes me think of our future together with nothing but positive outcomes. He makes me feel safe, feel beautiful, feel appreciated in this life, feel wanted by someone, and I'm so grateful to have him in my life. After dinner out on the sea, we ventured back to their home, and I stayed there for the night. I had no night clothing, but Augustus tried to offer some of his to me. The only problem was that they were too big on my small body, since he is taller and more well-defined than me. I swear that his chiseled body is like the statue of Hercules, just well-built and heavenly. I wore his clothing anyway, and it smelled like him. Lavender. I shared a room with him since Priscilla had her own room filled with paintings of ballerinas and her own balcony to look over the sparkling sea in the moonlight. While the house was asleep, I climbed into bed with him, and we kissed and kissed and kissed more. We talked and laughed, but quietly, and then kissed more. All I can remember was kissing, sweet, savory kisses, and the occasional feeling of thrust. But I will not get too into detail about that. Yesterday was an absolute fantasy. I cannot wait to see what lies ahead for us. Now I must go, diary, and I know you become irritably impatient. However, all good things come to those who wait. Stefan. June 29th, 1750. Diary, I know you must be filled with rage and fury, but please spare me, for I have a case describing why I have been absent for almost 2 full weeks. The last time I made my entry, I talked about visiting Priscilla and her brother and being with their family for a full day. When I returned home, my family had packed cases of clothes and other accommodations. I asked what the occasion was for, and my mother said that she felt ashamed for not being able to host a luxurious festivity like the one Priscilla's parents hosted. However, they wanted to surprise me with an alternative. They surprised me by saying we were taking a holiday in celebration of my acceptance into university. However, they would not tell me where we were going, which made my mind spin around the globe for miles. I was thinking of exploring Paris, London, or even Berlin. However, I do know my family, and they are not thinkers of my intelligence, so I was also imagining a place that's small and rural. However, they make it seem like we are really traveling to the greatest city in the world. It took 5.5 days to get to my surprise destination, and I believe I was coming down with anxiety and palpitation of the heart. When we met our destination, I was pleased to know we had traveled to Pisa. Nothing too extravagant, however, it has qualities that you do not find in an ordinary city. Of course, we took a trip to the Tower of Pisa, and a local artist made a portrait painting of me and my family. We went around and toured the various art galleries and wine cellars they had. I highly recommend you try Merlot if you get the opportunity to visit Pisa. I appreciated the affection and effort my family went through to make my achievement be celebrated, no matter if we were the most affluent or underprivileged family in the world. Tomorrow I am supposed to meet Priscilla and her family for a night to the opera to see a thrilling show the town keeps talking about non-stop, but my mind does not focus on anything at all except him. Well, adieu, my lovely. I promise I will come back soon to talk about my affair with a certain kind of person I'm falling for slowly. Stefan. July 1st, 1750. Yesterday was not as magical as my mind depicted, but of course it was filled with nothing other than art, stars, and him. I met Priscilla and her family at the opera house. I believe it's called Teatro Goldoni, a place of class, sophistication, and appreciated art, something my own family could not understand or afford. You must understand that I do not come from a very well-to-do family, and we never had a great-uncle who became insanely rich from the war, or a father who was intelligent enough to invest his life to the Catholic Church, or create a business to benefit his family. I'm not trying to bash at my parents. We are not poor either. We just are not able to do the things that Priscilla can do on a regular basis. Do you know anyone with a wealthy father that has a mansion, beach property, a boat, luxurious carriages, servants, and access to the best of everything from shows to shoes? I probably will never have my own luxury life like her. Maybe she lets me tag along with her because she feels sorry for me not having a perfect life. Maybe I am her accessory to her latest fashion, and she just needs me to look good for her own personal gain. I notice that the other wealthy children in the city are not very fond of her, which is peculiar to me because I thought all wealthy people have strong friendships. I digress from the actual situation. I'm so sorry for that little tangent. I felt like expressing my feelings for a moment. The opera was named Agrippina, which is an opera about a woman who is trying to plot the downfall of her son being emperor of the Roman Empire. It was humorous in a way. However, it sparked a light in me that made me relate to how my own mother treats me sometimes. She might judge me for my way of dress or speech, and she might tell me that I should be more like my brother and pursue more women. You have no idea how many times she constantly cries out about Lydia and how nice of a lady she was at the ball. The disgusting witch. It seems like I will never be able to make mother happy for even an ounce of a second. The opera was in 3 acts, so it lasted about 3 or 4 hours. I sat in between Priscilla, who was to my left, and Augustus to my right. He whispered in my ear how he thought operas were dreadful, and I laughed in a minimal tone. Priscilla kept pushing herself into our minor exchange and expressing how she adored operas and how she would love to dance in one some day when she becomes a glorified ballerina. Augustus would tell her to be quiet and keep her focus on the show. Then he would stare into my eyes and murmur slight words to me, but I could not hear. I told him to tell me what he was saying, but he told me that I had to wait until the end of the show to know. I had such strong urges to hold his hand, kiss his cheek, touch his chest. But I kept my composure for fear of losing him to judgment or death. Those long, horrific hours were making me shake and sweat for his affection. If I could kiss him in front of everyone, I gladly would, to show them that true love has no form. Priscilla was observing my behavior and asked politely what the matter with me was. I replied by saying the opera was gut-wrenching, and she laughed, approving my false claim. She looked over at Augustus and asked if he enjoyed the show, and he slightly smiled and told her not at all. I could feel she was offended by his opinion, since she was a performer herself and thought everyone else loved the performing arts. After the curtain was called, Augustus and I rushed out into the lobby while Priscilla's parents took her backstage to engage with all the dancers that she desperately wanted to meet ever since she was young. She was extremely pleased to meet her idol, Marie Salie, the only woman who conquered the dance form and proved that the corps féminin was just as valuable and capable as a man. This is what sparked a fire in Priscilla. She wanted to be a prodigy of Marie, the next woman to carry on the legacy of the importance of inclusion. Most, if not all, dances only consist of men, and some have to dress up as women to play the appropriate parts. Eventually, things will change and women will have the spotlight shared thanks to Priscilla. Already, she is my shining star, my wonderful friend. Augustus and I traveled to a private area of the opera house and kissed for as long as we could. Oh, how I missed his soft touch, the smell of him like lavender and rose petals. His green eyes were handsomely staring into my dull hazels. I could feel his bulging arms caress my frail and sensitive body as we passionately made love fly through the air. I wanted more. I wanted to undress him and gaze upon his perfection as we wrestled to show each other what real love is. His sun crossing over my glistening moon. Oh, yes, diary. I didn't care who would see our sinful lust. All I cared about at that very moment was him. I was sitting on his legs facing him when I felt his rod glide against me, and we both looked at each other. I was thinking to myself if I were ready to expose my temple and combine my own beauty with his. I panicked suddenly and told him that we should wait until it was proper to have that sort of connection. He understood, and we gathered ourselves as to look normal in front of others. Before we went back to Priscilla, he grabbed me and kissed me one last time. He told me that he wanted my corps magnifique. I could feel his heavy breath graze upon my neck. He wanted to engage with me before I left for university. At that moment, I developed a frightful emotion. I was not ready to move so quickly into intercourse like other men. I do admit that I love him, but I am not ready for such a big step. I told him that I am not ready for that type of love. We will have to get arranged with one another before I can completely show myself vulnerable. I could see the sadness in his eyes, but he would not complain. He was a true gentleman that could wait for my hand. We walked backstage to Priscilla, and she asked us where we had run off to. I was going to tell her that we went off to kiss, but Augustus stopped me in my tracks and told her that we went outside for fresh air. It got stale in the theater. She looked suspicious, but didn't ask any more questions. That night, Augustus asked me to stay at their home for the night, but I declined his offer. When I had returned home, I cried in despair. Why did I reject the one opportunity of a lifetime? I had the most handsome man on earth, and I told him I was not ready to express my loveliness to him. I feel so foolish. I am going to rest peacefully, diary. Sweet dreams. Stefan.